All right, we start this hour with a Fox News alert. We are learning new information about that missile that killed 2 people in Poland.
It was reportedly fired not by Russians, but by Ukrainian forces combating a Russian attack.
Yep.
It was a mistake.
This all unfolding while President Joe Biden was attending the G20 summit in Bali. White House correspondent Peter Doocy is there with the latest. Peter, last time we left you, the president was sleeping in mysteriously. We didn't know if he was sick or not. What happened after?
Well, what happened is the White House aides that are traveling with the president went and woke him up. Something has to be really, really big for that to happen, for somebody traveling with the president to knock on the door of the hotel room and say, we need your input on this right away. But that is exactly what went down yesterday, just right after we talked. And the way that Poland's president is describing this now is an unfortunate accident, which lines up with President Biden's initial caution that this missile likely was not launched from Russia.
There is preliminary information that contests that. I don't want to say that till we completely investigate. It's unlikely in the minds of the trajectory that it was fired from Russia, but we'll see.
We never see President Biden in a T-shirt in a hotel room like in this photo, but he phoned Poland's President Duda right away as the leaders considered the implications of a potential Russian attack against a NATO partner. There was some chatter of invoking NATO's Article 4, which would be a formal consultation when a member feels threatened. But they also needed to make sure this didn't call for a possible invoking of Article 5, where the military alliance would launch a military response. Poland's Duda says what happened is an isolated incident. There is no indication that more will take place. The North Atlantic Alliance is on standby. We have strengthened the readiness of the Polish armed forces, including the air defenses. Our planes will be supported by allied planes. We act calmly and prudently. The very crafted schedule of G20 events yesterday was thrown completely out the window as the G20 leaders that are here, who are also a part of NATO, went and huddled in a hotel conference room near the other events that were going on. They decided that it was most important to get together right then to try to avoid all-out war in Europe. And it does not look like we are heading towards that, but this investigation is continuing. Back to you.
Hey, Peter, so you have the G7 out of the G20 who get a chance to meet, because obviously I don't think China's too into it. But quick thing. They had to have pre-thought 9 months ago when this happened. There was an excellent chance that a NATO member was going to be hit. Don't you think they had a plan in place when, in fact, this happened accidentally or intentionally?
Well, you're right, because President Biden is saying, oh, you think that Putin, if we don't stop him, is just going to stop in Ukraine? So he's been warning about something like this happening, and they do have a plan, and that's basically NATO's Article 5, but there's a whole process that they have to go through where if somebody says it's time for Article 5, they have to get together and make sure that a military response is merited, but also they have to figure out exactly what that would look like.
Yeah, because Article 5 says an attack on any one of us is an attack on all of us, and they would have permission to retaliate with force if they decided to. But it looks like it'll probably be Article 4, which is just to allow members to bring some concern, because we don't. You had Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis say we don't want to overreact because, like you said, Steve, it looks like it was a mistake.
Absolutely. Peter, thank you very much. The live report from Bali. It's 8:08 in the evening already. Let's bring in Republican from Florida. He's a congressman and National Guard member as well. We're talking about Colonel Michael Waltz, member of the Armed Services Committee. Colonel, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
This had been a worry for a while that Russia would escalate and hit a NATO member. That was what was thought early, but now it looks as if it was a Ukrainian missile and it was a mistake that it went into Poland. Crisis averted?
Well, look, we can see these trajectories from our space-based assets or satellites and even our airborne assets. So I think we saw pretty early on with the way things were worded and everybody kind of hitting the pause button, that we needed to get to the bottom of exactly where this came from. But I do think, guys, this is a wake-up call for those that want to just stick their head in the sand and do nothing when it comes to Ukraine. Is actually a recipe to get our soldiers involved if Putin starts attacking, slices through Ukraine and starts attacking NATO members. They will invoke Article 5. That does obligate us by treaty to then have U.S. boots involved and on the ground. That's why if the Ukrainians are willing to do the fighting and dying and they're asking for the beans and bullets, we need to make the Europeans do more. We need to provide better oversight, but just pretending it's not a problem will lead to things like this.
Congressman, if the Russian army lived up to the hype, and if the Ukrainian President Zelensky actually took that ride out of the country and left like Gahani, there's no doubt that Russia would have been rattling the cages of Moldova and the Estonia, all the Baltic nations, and maybe even started pressuring Poland and started messing with their elections, if not direct military conquest. How have things changed since Ukrainians decided to fight and beat the Russians, who are a hollow bear?
Well, yeah, the world has seen now that when it comes to things like leadership, discipline, training, logistics, maintenance, their industrial base, that Russia is a hollow bear. They are being sidelined as a conventional military force. They still have a very viable nuclear threat. But again, we have a major world power that is now being sidelined so that we can focus on the greatest threat this country has ever faced, and that's the Chinese Communist Party. And the brave Ukrainian people led by Zelensky have done that. But the Europeans have got to step up. I want to make that point loud and clear. Once again, the United States is taking on this burden of helping defend freedom.
Yeah, Germany's not doing what they said they're going to do. France is not doing what they said they were going to do. We're the ones who are writing the checks, and they got to publicly pressure them to do what they're supposed to do.
And I'm not seeing that from Biden. I'm not seeing that at all. We're essentially everyone's patting themselves on the back to an extent, and Germany hasn't delivered a fraction of what they promised.
Well, India buys their oil, and they get nothing but pats on the back as well.
Congressman,
and China, 60% increase of business and trade with the Russians. They're basically propping them up with their own technology, propping them up economically, and essentially we get a kumbaya from Xi and Xi and Biden, as old pals, and we should have had a finger in their chest.
Yep.
Absolutely. And we should be putting very sanctions in place.
Yes, about that, and we need COVID origin answers. We're just not
Long
strong
list.
I know. Congressman, so last night, we're watching Sean Hannity's show, and Trump stands up at the podium in Mar-a-Lago and says, I'm back, I'm running for president in 2 years. There's some others that maybe we speculate, or there's been rumblings that they might be running as well, like Mike Pence and Ron DeSantis, Youngkin, Hogan, Asa Hutchinson, Tim Scott, Pompeo, Nikki Haley, and Chris Christie, just to name a few. Anything can happen, but what's your reaction to this?
Well, to your point on anything can happen, I mean, a lot of people thought Tom Cotton would be on that list as well, and made it for his family. So, we're going to be rife with speculation. We don't even know if Joe Biden's going to run at this point. But I got to tell you what, I thought that speech last night was incredible, guys. It was focused. It was disciplined. The tone was serious because we're in a serious moment in world affairs and in our country right now. And I think if the president stays forward-looking, outlaying how he's going to build on his agenda and his accomplishments, I think he's going to have a very good run. One of the lessons from this midterm is that people want results. They're tired of the rhetoric. They want results that they're going to feel on their kitchen table, and they want to feel more secure in their lives, in their cities, on the border, on the world stage, and economically. And I think the president makes this a security election and about security in our lives. that's going to be a winning formula. And I'll support getting back to that America First agenda all day long.
Well, he certainly got in early. It's 721 days before the election, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
In the meantime, there's an election coming up in your chamber, House Republican leadership elections. And so far, the Speaker nominee, Kevin McCarthy, and then you've got Steve Scalise running unopposed, the GOP whip, Tom Emmer of Indiana, Conference Chair Elise Stefanik, and the Chair, Richard Hudson, ran unopposed as well. You know, we heard that behind the scenes, the Freedom Caucus was, pushing at Leader McCarthy. What was going on?
Mm-hmm.
What did they want?
Well, look, a lot of it is, kind of the mechanics of how our conference works, how we decide what bills go to the floor, when amendments are accepted, who our committee chairmen and women are, and they want transparency there. They don't want all of the power to be in the hands of just a few. I think those are reasonable demands. McCarthy's listening to those demands, and he got, I think it was something like 170 to 30 in terms of, our support for him to be our speaker. And folks, that's different than January 3rd, where he needs to get 218 out of, say, 220. So we're going to continue to have a lot of internal family discussions so that we can get there. He can be speaker and we can move the country forward and get accountability from Afghanistan to COVID origin to on down the list that so many people are demanding.
So there's some horse trading going on behind the scenes in the run-up to the official election.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we elect him as our speaker, and he needs to get 218. If we end up with a majority of 220, that's tight. That's going to be a lot of conversations, but I think he's going to get there.
A couple of things. Andy Biggs has got, about 40 votes or something like that? So would he have a shot? Is there anybody else viable? Probably not. There's about 10 seats left. Where do you guys think you're going to end up? Right now, you're technically 217. Kevin Kyler looks like 218. Where do they think you're going to end up?
220, 222. I mean, sadly, this is up to California vote counting, which never gives me a warm and fuzzy at all. I think that's one of the things we got to take a hard look at is we need to know these results on election night. We need to have confidence in our democracy and our republic. And when you have foreign actors looking to muck around, that are mucking around inside of our election, we need, not to say we need to make America like Florida, but come on,
right.
we knew within hours.
California needs to change their state voting laws then, because what's going on is completely legal.
Nevada, on down. And then, we need to do some soul searching in terms of why we didn't do better on our messaging, but also, look, we need to, I think, move somewhat away from this same day from accountability or from showing up to vote. Mail works for our rural voters.
Absolutely.
Mail works for our senior citizens. If you do it right, you have integrity. Mail can really work for us and has in the past.
Well, Trump said last night he would want voter ID, same-day voting. We find the results that night, and paper ballots. But isn't it up to each state?
Yep.
If he won, would he be able to impose that?
No, each state.
No, that's right. It's up to the states. The states determine how elections are conducted. It's in the Constitution. I don't see some of these blue states, and we need to figure out how to fight on that battlefield and how to get our rural and our senior citizens and our other voters with integrity to vote as much as possible.
Okay.
I don't think we can put all our eggs in
the harvesting is crazy.
a basket.
All right.
Congressman, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colonel.